So Inventor has 4 file types. It has a part file with the file extension of IPT. It has an assembly file with the file extension of IAM, a drawing file or drafting, which is a DWG file, and it has a presentation mode, which is a way of producing exploded views and animations of your work, and that's an IPN file. Now we are going to create a new part, and the first little exercise is exercise 1, is we're going to create a 2D drawing on the XY plane. I like the XY plane because it's logical, we do our graphs that way. And I'm going to go to line, and I'm going to snap a line there. You see how it goes to, it tries to snap to a horizontal line. It's almost like it's magnetic. You can click and that automatically applies this little constraint up here. It'll do the same in the vertical direction, and that'll automatically apply a perpendicular constraint here. You do the same thing here, and you'll find a point where it will be horizontal and in line with the end of the line above, and then you can snap to that one and you've got a perfect rectangle. You click OK to finish the rectangle. You can then start to constrain this. So we're going to click horizontal constraint, and we're going to find the midpoint of this line here, select it, and then select the center or origin. Now I usually have the origin folder open, so I can select the center point off there, because sometimes it becomes, on big models, it's almost invisible. It's a small yellow dot in the center of your model. I then come along here, I go to the vertical constraint, and I find the center point of this side, and I constrain it there. It's now centered around the origin. Now, the reason I deliberately drew that off center was so that you could see it snap into place. Well, it's actually quite good practice, because if you draw things too perfectly, you'll find they'll only be a pixel away from where you want them to be, and then you can't see them move. And until you start getting things properly constrained and they start to turn black, you can't tell that they've been properly constrained. The best way to confirm it is to use this little icon down here, and that will switch on and off the visibility of the constraints. I usually toggle it on and off a couple of times. You can use F8 to do that as well. But that will show you all the different constraints that have been applied to this model, whether you applied them or whether they were inferred from the snapping mechanism that's built in. Okay. Now the other thing we're going to do is put a couple of dimensions on there. So we snap to that line and we drag the dimension up here and we put in, let's say 20, hit return, and you see how these two lines now have gone black. They are now constrained. In other words, if I zoom right out, the software now knows that this is on this plane somewhere, and it knows that those two lines are parallel. It knows that they're equidistant either side of the origin, so it knows where they are, and it knows how far apart they are. But at the moment, it doesn't know how long they are. So we'll just put another dimension on here, snap to there, and we'll put that as 15. And now you can see down here it says fully constrained. Okay. Now it's very important that all of your sketches are fully constrained. I can't stress that enough. Your models, especially as they become more and more complex, will start to break down if you start using sketches that are unconstrained. And you'll see that there's a little pin through the sketch icon here to say that it has been fully constrained. So we click to say that we'll accept that, and we're then going to just extrude that sketch. Now by default it extrudes in one direction. Now that's okay, but you might want it in the other direction. Ideally you want it in both directions, because that will allow you to extrude symmetrically either side of a central plane, and that gives you a sensible plane for then mating other components too. So when you start to build assemblies, if you've got your build planes in the right places, it will become so much easier to build your models. There is an asymmetric option as well, so here it's assuming I want it 10 millimeters in one direction and 5 millimeters in the other direction. I'm just going to go back to the symmetric, and that value there of 10 millimeters is divided by 2, so it's 5 millimeters this way, 5 millimeters that way. I'll press OK. The other little thing I'd like to show you is if you hover over your home view here and go right click and do perspective with ortho faces, that actually then gives you a perspective view of your model, and that I personally find is much easier to work with than if I show you the orthographic version. You see how out of scale that all looks. You get an isometric view, and it's really not very pleasant to look at, but that's just a personal thing. You don't need to do that. Okay, that's exercise 1.